Hi and welcome to the show. I'm quite impressed. We've actually got a few people actually joining me. I'm pleasantly surprised. I didn't think that I'd get that. I was looking at the messages already. Dwayne, good evening. It's 6 p.m. in the UK here. I don't know where you are, but good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. So what I've got is I've got a few questions that people have submitted to me, but I'll also take things from you now as well. So if you've got anything, type it into the top chat bit, and we will answer them as we come to them. I've got a feeling we'll probably be joined at some point by Cubit the cat. I kind of expect him to arrive, knowing what he's like. I'm hoping you can all hear me so far. Suddenly we've got a bit of an issue. Just bear with me. I'm just going to see what we've got. Okay. Hopefully you can. Be useful if somebody can actually just confirm in the chat that you can actually hear me and everything's going okay. It's saying there's not enough video to get smooth streaming. It's fairly predictable because it's been excellent all day, and now I've come to test it. It's saying it's poor. So I'm just checking what the warning message says, if there's anything in there. Okay. Yeah, stream was healthy at 6, and at 2 minutes past it then says it's a problem. So we'll make a start with the questions. Like I said, hopefully you can all hear me. It's worked well enough in the test, so I believe it's working. So I've sent quite a few questions. I'm going to look at them almost in a random order. Paul Wilson asked me, how often do I game and what am I gaming at present? So let's break that down into two different ones. Let's start with how often do I game. Bulk of my gaming is Friday nights with the Like a Stone Wall Club. Tim Whitworth runs that, and we've had a great time over the last few weeks. We've been playing the first Domino campaign using the 7 days to the River Rhine scenarios. They've been absolutely brilliant as a campaign. It literally came down to one turn over the entire campaign before we got a decision. It was that tight. I was most impressed with that. So that's what I've been gaming lately. I've also play occasionally. Saturday mornings I go and play with my grandkids, introducing them into gaming, and there's a couple of videos on the channel talking about how I try and introduce them to gaming. My grandson's currently got heavily into Magic the Gathering. He's getting into that. I've dug up my old cards. I'm playing a few games with him. We've also been playing a fair bit of 1 hour Skirmish Wargames, which are lovely and simple. They're diceless, they're card driven. I quite like that. We've been playing quite a few on the Zulu Wars because I've got 2 small forces built up for that. So that's what we've been gaming there. Like I said, most of the stuff I'm gaming is 7 days to the River Rhine for modern, and then various odds and bits and pieces. I do a fair bit of solo gaming as well, and obviously for the last 18 months during lockdown, I've been really busy with that. Been playing a lot of different games. I've been playing Battle Space. That's been quite interesting because it's actually a set of solo rules. 7 days to the River Rhine again. I've done a lot of that as well. So I've been playing a fair bit type-wise. So what else have we got? Alan Foster's asked me, what's the next project you've got for 7 days to the River Rhine? Well, you'll probably notice I do a lot of write-ups on the webpage. There'll be a link in the description if you don't know where it is, but it's https // as one word, coldwargoeshot.weebly.com. Got a lot of stuff on there. You'll notice I put a lot of the army lists on there. I'm gradually expanding the lists that are in the original game. And I'm also writing a campaign which will go onto there. We're also, as part of the group, basically modifying the rules a little to play larger scale games for the 1967 Six-Day War, which jokingly we're referring to as 6 days to the Suez Canal. So they're the projects going on at the minute. What else have we got? We've got, just trying to read my writing on that. Dexy Clare has asked me a question based around 1 hour skirmish war games. How would I treat the British Army post 1990 in the game? Okay, this is a bit of my speciality. Some of you may know I'm in the Army Cadet Force and have been since 1992 officially, or I was there for about a year before that. So it's an era I know a fair bit about. You'd be looking at using, for the start of the period, 8-man sections, broken down into 2 fire teams, Charlie and Delta, equally equipped. You'd have 1 LSW, which is the light support weapon, which is the light machine gun, and you'd have 3, including the NCOs, which would be a corporal in Charlie and a lance corporal in Delta, armed with SA-80s, initially the A1s, obviously later in the 1990s, the A2 or into the 2000s. So quality-wise, obviously it's generally being a professional army, it'll probably be reasonably high, so you might consider special abilities for them. I probably would give them body armor, which gives them an extra defense value. I think that would be useful, so they're getting 2 cards basically in defense, more if they're in cover. And other than that, they are fairly straightforward. As you move through the period, you start supplementing. The LSW is found to be not particularly effective. If you want a good account, which is a balanced account, the SA-80 is a very controversial subject. I'd recommend the Osprey Weapon series by Neil Grant. He has the one on the SA-80, and it's an excellent read. It's short, but it's got a lot of good information in there. And being slightly biased, perhaps, it's also got one of my photos in there. So yeah, Sean, I've just seen you. Yeah, by all means, you can ask a question on anything you like. I can't guarantee an answer, but please do. I'll finish this question, and as soon as yours comes up, I'll then sort of look at that. As you move through the period, the LSW became less effective. Was regarded as less effective. It was supplemented by the Minimi. That was added to the section. The A2 version of the rifle with a much better reliability came in. You then got the next change when they started looking at it and realizing that supplementing it with GPMG became an option, and the Gympie made a reappearance. You then got the designated marksman's rifle coming in, and just before that, each fire team acquired the UGL, the underbarrel grenade launcher, so that there was a grenade launcher in each fire team. So that was what you ended up with sort of through the period. And again, Neil's book is very good. There's some brilliant illustrations by Peter Dennis showing a fire team going through all of the periods. So you get a really good look at what they should be like. Okay, so that was that question. Sean, I'm still waiting for your question, so I'll try another one. Al Morn has asked, how did I get started in gaming? Right. It's my dad's fault. We went to London and we went into a bookshop. I've already got into model making, and there were some of the old, for those who remember them, the old Airfix guides, and they were reduced, and I picked up 3 of them. I got one for modelling World War II armoured cars, and I also got one on modelling tanks and the conversions. I've never really got round to many of them, but they were an interesting read and gave me historical detail, which, to be honest, is probably what a lot of gamers do anyway. We just read rather than actually game. And there was a 3rd one by Bruce Quarry called World War II Wargaming. I've never heard of Wargaming. Wondered what it was. I had a look at it. Oh, new rules for using the figures. Oh, I've got some of these figures. This actually looks quite interesting. So picked it up, and from then on, it was all the old Airfix figures all over the bedroom floor. I used to have a little step, so that almost invariably we'd have a beach landing with the defences on the top of that. And from there, went to the local library. I was always a massive reader, and I found there was a whole section on wargaming. This is interesting. So what have we got? And I started reading them, all the Donald Featherstone books, all of those. Got massively into it. Got to the interlibrary loan system where I was then starting to borrow the other books that were being referred to. Started getting more and more into it. Discovered that there was board gaming as well. There used to be a little shop in Cardiff I used to go to. And I bought the SPI Westwall quad from there. So that was how I started in board gaming. And then I found there was a local model and gaming club. I went to that, and I got introduced to something called Tunnels and Trolls and started playing that. So I sort of hit the hobby in multiple different stages, and unfortunately I've never really stopped since. So okay, what shall we go on to next? That's an interesting one. John Kane has asked, what weapon would I carry in the Twilight 2000 role-playing game? Ooh, that's an interesting one. Now, for characters, I always like to have one carrying something that was very iconic for me in the game, which was the G11 rifle. It really was one of the best ways, I thought, to emphasize the setting, was the fact that the equipment was dying. You couldn't get the ammunition for it. It was a lovely high-tempered kit, but was becoming useless because it wasn't something you could use. So that would probably be high on my list for a character. For a personal one, the bit of kit I would carry would be an SA-80 rifle, simply through sheer familiarity. The drills are muscle memory, and if anyone remembers the Punisher Armory cartoon series of comics a good few years ago, now, for about 1990, there was a lovely bit of advice in there, which was carry a gun that is the one you trained on, because then you can actually play. You can actually sort of best use it. You're not messing around. You know where the parts are. Muscle memory comes in. I mean, just to give you the idea, if I'm holding the rifle there, I'm holding it there, and I've got a stoppage, without thinking, and these will be the Cadet Force drills, not the regular drills. Safety catch. If it was an SA-80, change lever, tilt the weapon, hold the working parts to the rail, look inside. I'm doing it without even thinking where my hands are going. So I would carry that. So that was John's question. Oh, we've got a couple of questions coming in. Tom Cygnus has asked, looking for a World War II rule set to play solo. Any suggestions? Right. I'm writing my own set at the minute. That's been on the back burner now for quite some time. It depends what scale you're looking for. For a quick beer and pretzels game, I can't recommend highly enough 1 hour skirmish war games. I have to be honest, I've not played it in World War II yet. That is on my list to do. That would work nicely with 20mm, 28, maybe even 15s quite reasonably. So that would be high on my list. It's quite easy to play solo because it's all card turning. You're sort of playing against yourself. Iron Cross comes highly recommended, which was the rules that 7 Days to the River Rhine grew out of, and I do like that concept. I know a lot of gamers have actually gone to 7 Days to the River Rhine and then backdated the rules to World War II with new data charts. We're considering doing that as well. That's relatively easy to play solo, particularly if you don't use the cards. You just play it as a straight game, because that works very well. You do have to play a bit more against yourself because of the interruptions and so on. But I think I think it's playable solo. I think they are fairly good options. Let's get rid of that email. It's blocking the. It's now telling me I'm live. I love that email. So what have we got from Sean there? Sean said, weapons with heat rules. Do they have any additional benefit? Explains about them hitting special armor, but doesn't seem to give them any real benefit otherwise. There is nothing in the rules. I would say that what is actually occurring with that is the value for the penetration it's built in. The rules don't affect penetration by distance, so realistically it matches up. I don't think they actually need anything. We found in the first Domino campaign that using something like a Challenger 1, I know was when I brought those on, that those were the bane of Tim's life, because he was firing missile after missile at them and only inflicting the one hit, try and build up the morale, simply because the rolling the 2 dice and taking the lower really was effective. And I know he got quite frustrated by that. So special armour makes a big difference. Like I said, we're using it at the minute for the Arab-Israeli wars, where you haven't got special armour, and all of a sudden missiles, I think, will be a lot nastier in that because of the there's nothing to reduce the heat effect. So hopefully that was useful. Let's have a look what else we've got. We've got another question from John Kane, which was, what luxury item would you carry in Twilight 2000 if you were a PC? Ooh. Now, I always say to people in the cadet force, when you're going on exercise, chuck one luxury item in your backpack, something that's going to pick your morale up. There's lots of different things. Psychologically, for me, having a shave in the field always helped. As soon as I had a shave in the field, I felt psychologically a lot better off. What I used to chuck in, probably my biggest luxury items, were either a little travel chess set or a book, depending on what I was doing. I quite liked those. That just sort of psychologically helped me. So in Twilight 2000 terms, yeah, I think one of those would probably be my answer. What else have we got? We've got Brian Schultz has asked. There seems to be a lot of questions about British Army kit, which is quite useful considering I know it. In Twilight 2000 terms, what would British troops carry, and what are the rations? Well, I was always given a good bit of advice. Just bear with me, otherwise my voice is going to go by the end of this. Which is, you fight out of your webbing, you survive out of your combat jacket, and you live out of your Bergen. Bergen, if you don't know what that is a backpack. So your immediate survival kit goes into your smock. Now, I used to wear in the field an SAS pattern smock. Lovely bit of kit because it's windproof and it's got 12-inch deep pockets. Lovely bit of kit. Now, in that sort of things that I would have would be things like, well, between there and my trouser pockets would be things like field dressings, which are usually worn in a pouch on the arm there. Amusingly, the very early pattern DPM combats had it on the front of the trousers, which was very painful when you dive for cover. The running joke was it must have been designed by a woman who wanted revenge. So field dressings, and you always carry 2 because bullets have entry and exit wounds. You'd have in there a spoon tied onto your combat jacket. There was always a massive debate which was the best spoon. A lot of people these days are using sporks, which are really nice. I used to have the early version of the McDonald's McFlurry spoon because it was very deep and it was angled. It was very good for getting into the corners of the ration pack pouches. That's what I had. Then in the pockets I'd have things like the essentials like cam cream, spare laces for my shoes, for boots rather, always a useful bit of kit to have. Pen knife, again tied to the smock, pair of gloves, usually a woolly hat at the time. I'm now tending to change more to a bush hat. They work reasonably well. The beret is not something that works well in the field. I'm not a big fan of that tactically. What else would I tend to have in there? The next meal, that would be in there. Little bits of kit like that. Going into the webbing, what I would have in there is the ammunition pouches. They would have ammunition in, fairly predictably. Now, depending on the webbing I was wearing, if it was 58 pattern, depending on what rifle I'm using, if I was using an SA-80, it would have the 30-round magazines in there, 4 of them in each pouch. If I was carrying the SLR, it's usually 3, but I'd also have a field dressing at the bottom because the pouches were designed for the larger Bren magazines. So to bring them up a bit, I would actually put a field dressing at the bottom there. Grenades in the pouches. I'm not a big fan of the American system where you hang them off your webbing because sometimes they fall off. If you're going to carry the grenades in your ammo pouches, the grenades go into the right hand pouch, the magazines in the left, because you use your left hand to reload. So you've got that. Usually then 2 water bottle pouches, because you never know when you're going to have enough water, and that's one thing I do like with the 4th edition rules, is they've sort of thought about that. Respirator would be in there, a waterproof jacket in a pouch, if I'm not wearing it, spare socks, and probably even a spare pair of socks going into the smock. So I've got that. A bit more medical kit, compass if I haven't fixed it to my jacket, or I was quite well known for carrying at least 2 compasses, which is actually known in the British Army as one of the most dangerous weapons, or it's the most dangerous weapon in the British Army when combined with the other component, which is an officer. If you give them a map as well, that was lethal. So I carried that in the webbing. You'd also have the rest of the day's food. I used to carry a single mess tin. Some people carried 2. I used to, at one point in my was wearing 58, where we'd have an old Pakistani ammunition pouch, which was really good because it would hold the large mess tin, whereas the water bottle pouches didn't. In game terms, there'd probably be a bayonet on there as well. And then you've got the backpack, the Bergen. The British Army Bergen that would be standard issue by the war, the PLC Bergen, is very, very good. It's got 2 side pouches which will unzip and zip together to form a day sack. And then you've got the main Bergen as well. There were 2 types. There was the infantry and the all arms. The infantry one was a proper Bergen. The all arms was much more almost like a case, but without a hard frame. So I'd always go for the infantry one, and there were long and short back versions depending on your height and how much you wanted to carry. So in there would be things like sleeping bag, basher kit, so basically shelter half, string, bungees, tent pegs, with plenty of spares because they will get lost. In there as well, more rations, changes of clothes, things like that, wash kit, things like that, although the toothbrush would usually go into the smock pocket. So that's the sort of kit I would carry. And if you're building a character for Twilight 2000, I hope that might sort of help you think about what you're carrying and where. Like I said, the rules of survive out your combat jacket, fight out your webbing, live out your Bergen, that's advice going back at least to the 1960s. It's now on at least the 4th generation of people to use it. I quite like it. As to the rations, well, the British Army rations varied considerably over the period. I had the pleasure of experiencing most of them. Early 1990s, they were tinned. They were quite nice. I quite liked them. They were a bit of a faff to cook. You have to open the tins, cook them. So the army went into what they called boil in the bag, which were silver foil bags, very thick bags. They would then literally just be put in the water and boiled. Little tip that one of my cadets learned the hard way is boiled sweets. While it says boil, they're already boiled. You do not need to put them in the water. Yeah, that was interesting. So you have got that. Now there were various bits in there. You had a brew kit, tea and coffee. You had in there as well milk, which was powdered, and sugar. There was a hot chocolate, which was one of the most prized commodities in the kit. You then had 3 meals. Breakfast was a boil in the bag, and there was usually an oatmeal block or something similar to go with it. Evening meal was quite substantial. It was in 2 main parts. You had a main meal, which would be things like steak and potatoes in a bag, hamburger, I think that was, I don't know what that was again. I think that was with mashed potato. So you had that in a bag, and again these were just boiled. And then you had a dessert as well. I always used to love the fruit cocktail one. That was always a popular trade. I used to usually trade away things like the butterscotch pudding and things like that. I wasn't too keen on them. But this was the massive thing. You used to just chuck everything together and then share it out. I used to say to my guys, as long as you've got your main meals, I don't worry what they are. Even if it's like you're having a breakfast for an evening meal, that's fine with me. And corned beef hash was always good for that. I would trade a lot for that one. And then you had your lunch, which was designed to be eaten on the go. It was things like crackers and spread, or biscuits and spread, really. There'd be in there as well some soup that you could have then, or you could have it in the evening. It worked out as, I believe, 2,500 to 3,000 calories per box. That was designed for 24 hours. There were the lightweight Arctic rations, which a friend of mine was issued constantly, even though he was actually in Reading. So that wasn't the world's most useful kit for him. It meant you had to carry a lot more water. So while the Arctic rations are good, they are bulky because you've got to, in the sense that you've got to carry lots of water. Obviously, in the Arctic, you can just boil water. So that was the British Army ration pack. It's changed considerably in real life. In real life now, they are much more modern taste. There's a lot more curries and things in there. The army used to have, I think it was 6 different menus that were changed every so often. Now there are 20 different ones. They're much more catering to modern tastes. They've taken out a lot of the tea and coffee, and they've put in instead things like Lucozade powder and things like that, because it's been designed for a more tropical climate. You're talking Iraq, Afghanistan, places like that. So you're talking sort of desert type conditions. So that's what you tend to get in there now. Okay, so that's the first lot of questions. So what else have we got? This was an interesting one. Michael Owens has asked me, what is my favourite edition of Twilight 2000? I haven't played Twilight 2013, so we'll get rid of that one for now. That means I've got version 1, 2, 2.2 and 4 to look at. Rules-wise, I think 1 was the weakest, even though ironically that was the one I played the most. Version 4, I think, is probably the strongest in rule terms. It's probably the best for capturing the setting. Background-wise, having grown up through the Cold War, I always thought version 1 was very clever. It's one of the few times that you actually get sort of the West moving east. I've only even come across one. Wargaming SPI did a game of that once, where the West basically moved to help revolts in Eastern Europe. So I liked that one. It had some oddities in it. Version 2 came along. That's sort of the end of the Cold War. Yeah, that was okay. I think it was the weakest of the backgrounds. 2.2 I thought was very good. What people don't realise is how little a turning point there is. And they've carried my favourite turning point on into version 4, which is when you had the August coup in Moscow, and the KGB Alpha Group was tasked with storming the White House and putting down the anti-coup, basically. The commander basically said, "Nope, I'm not prepared to do that," and resigned on the spot. They turned to his deputy, asked him, he resigned on the spot, and that was very much where the sort of the coup ended, for a better description. In the version 2.2 and 4, they don't resign. But I can't remember if it was my addition to the background or whether it was part of the official one, but there was a case where the commander resigned, but the second in command didn't, and then led the storming, and Yeltsin died in the fighting. So yeah, version 4 has been interesting. obviously there was a massive backlash about the alpha version over the way that Britain was handled, and I know I submitted a fair bit of information to Free League, and I believe that's why I actually get the credit as a playtester for it, was the fact that I actually gave all that feedback. It's growing on me. There are oddities in there. I've done a couple of videos that you can actually see about that. So I'm going to go with version 2.2, which I modified myself, I've got to be honest. I think my background comes to something like 300 pages worth of background because I wanted to get the history bang on, and I'm a bit obsessive with things like that. So yeah, that's where I would go with that. So what else have we got? Phil Avens asked me about 7 days to the River Rhine. There seems to be a pattern about what I'm being asked here. What am I working on 7 days to the River Rhine? Well, there's 3 things I've got going off at the minute. I am working on a campaign which will be set in the classic Cold War period, involving Northag, which is basically the British sector. We may sort of spill that one over. I'm going to try and dig out my old command decision rules, which had a campaign for the Soviet invasion of Denmark. So I'm looking for that. That may sort of crop up, and the two may combine. I'm looking at sort of, while I like the first Domino campaign, I want to try and make it a bit more continuous of the forces. So if you do squander all your forces on one table, you struggle on the next one because you've got less troops to choose from. I'm working on a mechanism for that, and I may put some things up in the next couple of weeks or possibly months for you to play test on that if anyone's interested. Setting I want to explore in a bit more depth is Iran, in a World War III scenario. Harold Coyle did a brilliant book, Sword Point, about a simultaneous Russian and American invasion of Iran, with the Iranians fighting both sides in the middle, and I think that would make a fascinating campaign. And the other one I'm working on, as mentioned earlier, is the adaptation of it to the Arab-Israeli wars. So we're looking at what we jokingly called, as I think I said earlier, 6 days to the Suez Canal. So we've got that. What else do we have? We've got Sophie McNabb. She's asked, lots of gamers paint to music. What do I use? Ooh, that's an interesting one. If I'm doing sort of more ancient games, I tend to use things like Gladiator, Enya, Clannad, something that sort of keeps within that setting. Enya's The Celts is great. It's what I'm using to paint up some of my Gauls too. It just helps me get into the right atmosphere. Napoleonics, I'm going to get a little bit of that up at the minute. So that's going to be heavily based around, there's a great album on YouTube called Music of the Redcoats, and then the album of the music from Sharp is absolutely bang on. They are fantastic. Anything else I tend to use? I listen to a bit of Chris de Burgh. Not so much the quiet romantic music that most people think of with him. Songs like Last Night, Don't Pay the Ferryman, Fields of Agincourt, that they work for me. And some of my fantasy stuff, Wagner's Ring Cycle works really well. Okay, what else have we got? Sasha Friesel. What got me involved with Twilight 2000, and how did you get to be a play tester for 4th edition? Okay, let's sort of break that one down. What got me involved with Twilight 2000? I started playing it back in the late 80s. It came out about 1984, I think. I probably started playing it a year or 2 years later. It was very expensive then, being an American import. Picked it up and really enjoyed it. Great Gaming Group was a really good one for that, with a lot of people with good military knowledge. And we really had a good time with it. And from there, every time there was the new edition, except for 2013, for some reason I never got around to picking up 2013. I think it was at the time it wasn't the easiest thing for me to pick anything up, so I think that was what happened there. For the 4th edition, basically I backed the Kickstarter. As soon as I heard it was out, it was, ooh, I'm having that. So I backed that. When they asked for feedback on the alpha version, I put a lot of feedback in. I don't know if you back the alpha, you can still see all the feedback I put in. But I did put an awful lot in regarding the British background and some of the kit. It was nice to see some of my comments did seem to get listened to. And then I'd done a video where I defended some of Free League's decisions. I know there's been a bit of debate about how good they are on some of the things. I sort of did that, and someone said, "Well, you're bound to like it. You're one of the playtesters." And I went, "Pardon? What? I haven't paid to get my name in the rules." And they went, "No, you're down as a playtester." When I looked at it, it turns out that they've listed me as I suppose as a thank you for all the feedback. I'm not employed by them, and if they want to employ me, great, I'd be interested. But yeah, it was just I was as surprised as anybody else on that one. So what else have we got? Yeah, Adam Winard has asked, what do I think's the biggest thing missing in the 4th edition of Twilight 2000? Yeah, the two things I think for that were British characters in kit, and I've got some of that on my website already. But more will follow on that. What I'm waiting for is the official guidance for for releasing material for the game. And once that comes out, then I'll be putting a fair bit out for that. So we've got that, and the other thing I think as well is some of the kit from the earlier editions, which was very characterful, but hasn't seemed to have made it in. The G11 rifle, you know, I mentioned that one earlier. That's a prime one. The M1A2 Abrams the Giraffe. I've renamed that the M1A3, and there's an article I've submitted for the Good Luck You're on Your Own fanzine, talking about the development leading up to that. So that may get published in the 4th edition. So David Adams, you know, there you go. I got you a little reference in there. So things like that I think are missing, and they may well come into it. I don't think it's going to be long before we sort of start getting, even if it's only fan-based versions. So I'm looking forward to that. What else have we got? Philip Scarrow, what army or armies are you working on at the minute? How big is my pile of shame? Yeah. When I started gaming, someone once said, you're not a proper wargamer unless you've got your own body weight in unpainted figures. I'm a big bloke, and I buy mainly plastic figures, and it's still far more than me. So yeah, I've got a massive pile of shame. It's boxes and boxes full. Gradually it gets done, but I'm sure I'm buying it faster than I'm actually painting it. What army or armies am I working on? I'm building up a small skirmish army for Napoleonics. Not going to be a massive army, I don't think. But myself and my other half have just watched the entire series of Sharp all the way through. Can't wait for the new Sharp book, Sharp's Assassin, that comes out later in the year, and I've ordered a signed copy of first edition of that, so I'm looking forward to that coming through. And for those who aren't aware about it, Bernard Cornwell is basically carrying on the story literally straight after Sharp's Waterloo. He's carrying it on with the immediate aftermath as the French are fleeing. That does sound quite interesting. So we've got I've got that on the go. My Romans and Gauls are very much on the back burner. There's I've just finished most of my 20mm Cold War Brits. They're finished. I'm going to build up some 20mm Cold War Russians, probably some VDV, which are the paratroops. Got a couple of Heinz to work on with that. So yeah, I've got that being worked on. Often I'll just pick up something and just for fun paint it up. My 15mm armies are always on the go for modern. So yeah, I'm doing an awful lot on that. What else have we got? Andy Newark. How do I choose what to review? That's a good question, a very fair one. I think with that, it's often I'll see something and go, what about that? Is that any of any interest to me? Or something will be on offer, and you go, Star Wars Legions fitted that category. It was in the Amazon Prime sale. Okay, I'm a Star Wars geek. Yeah, I'm probably not going to use the rules. They're more fiddly than I want, and I want something really fast play. 1 hour skirmish, I think, is jumping out for that, and I'll probably be writing rules to do that. When I do that, they'll appear on the website as well. I've got to assemble and paint them yet. So yeah, that's how that one came about. Sometimes somebody will recommend something to me. In a few cases, I've actually had manufacturers get in touch with me and say, "Ooh, can you review? If you want to send me free stuff, I'll review it." I mean, I'm going to be honest. It's a cheap way for me to build up stuff. And the latest one of the latest reviews where I did the Acid House terrain, which is sort of the Necromunda type terrain. That was I got in touch with them and said because we were looking at the Kickstarter relaunching it to do another batch of them, and I went, well, when you've got some, would you be interested in me reviewing it? A bit cheeky, I know. They went, yeah, here's a box. We've got a couple left, and yeah, that arrived. So it's very much random. Sometimes I'll walk into a shop and go, oh, that'd be an interesting review, or I'll just see something. Other times I'll pick something up because, oh, that'll be a good one to do, and I could do with doing something in this scale or about this, and I'll look around for it. So it's very random. There isn't any sort of pattern to it. If people are writing rule sets and they want me to have a look at them, I'm quite happy to do that. And then do reviews. They're not always going to be a positive review. If something's no good, even if it's been provided free, I will say so. And I'll be honest, a couple of my reviews have been quite savage. If you look at, for example, the worst model kit ever series, I did a couple there. So, yeah, no real pattern, I'm afraid. What we got? Khan27. Now, this was a big question. What impact do you think 3D printing is going to have on the hobby? Massive. No two ways about it. I've already got an army now that has been basically made up from 3D printing. My British 20mm army, the figures are the Revel figures. Other than that, everything in the force basically has been 3D printed, with the exception of a couple of challenges. And the challenges, the only way I can really tell them apart from the resin models, so resin printed, are the fact that they've got orange warning lights on. That's the only difference. So you can now get a whole army 3D printing. And my VDV, I've got a few of the old Esky figures. I'm probably going to 3D print. I've test printed a few Russian infantry. So I've got them. Apologies for Cubit the cat going past them. He's been pretty good. He's been sat here quietly with me. So what was his little starring moment when he shot across there? So you can 3D print infantry now. So it's definitely, I think, going to be the way forward. Games Workshop are obviously very worried about it. They've actually had the new policy where, unless it's something that you have 3D designed and printed yourself, like an accessory, they'll treat that as equivalent if you sculpting things from scratch. Then you can't use it in their competitions, in their stores. It's going to be interesting where it goes. You can get stuff 3D printing that you can't get anywhere else. Michael Togwell, for example, has done the M41DK for his Danish army. So he's actually basically taken someone's stock M41 and upgraded it to the latest Danish version, which was the recce version that they were using, I believe, up to about the 2000s. He'll probably correct me on that next time I see him. So you can get stuff that you can't get elsewhere. There's an awful lot of it free, and cost-wise, let's be realistic, it's not that much now. Even buying the machine, and if you go to look at my videos again, you'll see I actually did a video considering how much it costs to 3D print stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to completely revolutionise the hobby. I think that we're going to see a change in how armies are put together. I think as printers as well change, as they get cheaper and cheaper, you're going to see more and more of them. I mean, in like a stone wall group, that we were counting that there's about 4 people with printers now, 3D printers. Most of the buildings are now starting to get resin printed, or FDM printed in a few cases, depending on what scale we're in. The vehicles are. Yeah, it's a massive game changer. I think it's probably about as game changing as the move to plastic figures, going back a few years, when we went from the all metal to the multi-purpose sets. I think that is probably only going to be a fraction of how much this change will be. Okay, what else have we got? Leslie Taylor. What period have I never gamed would I like to try? Ooh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, Agincourt is crossing my mind. The Perry miniatures for that, they're a fantastic set of figures. That's something I'd love to do, although I'm not sure my painting skills are up to that one. I suppose it's a slight cheat, but I'm tempted by the Harry Turtledove World at War series, where you get the race, which are a bunch of aliens with probably about 2000-ish technology, landing in the middle of World War II. I think that would be fascinating to game. And as I said, I'm building up the Napoleonics. I suppose it's a bit of a cheat. I haven't actually started gaming them yet, but I'm still building them. So that's one I've always wanted to do. Can't even remember playing much of it, even back pre-going to university, when I used to be part of the Wargaming club there. We used to play Ancients there, a lot of role-playing, World War II, and what was then classed as modern, which is now historical period, which is a bit worrying. I can't recall playing Napoleonics there. So yeah, and doing odd things, I think. I'm not quite sure what I'd sort of put in for that. I've played a fair bit of fantasy, but I think trying a different fantasy setting. The world of George R.R. Martin is something I probably would like to try at some point, doing something with that. I know there's an official set of rules and figures. Whether I'd go for that or whether I'd try something different, I don't know. So yeah, I've got to be honest, it's very often, I'm very much the sort of gamer who goes to a show, sees something he's never seen before and goes, oh, that's interesting. Perhaps never gets around to gaming it, but does do a lot of reading up on it and things like that. So yeah, that's perhaps the best I can answer for that one. And I've got Jay Wilson sent a message as well. What are the pictures on the wall behind me? And I'll extend that into the other bits and pieces. The bits and pieces, the swords and things, as I look into my left, you've got the sword from the, or to my right, sorry, the sword from the Lord of the Rings, Sting. That's just a foam prop, very from my photography. The next big one is a 1.5 sword. That was actually forged by myself and my other half. For my 50th birthday, she took me down to Hereford, and we actually forged that sword. Small buckler I picked up in an antique shop. Below it is the little hand crossbow I got from the Royal Armouries. A training 1.5 sword next to that. You've then got what they call a ballock knife there. If you look at the hilt, you'll understand why. And then there's a training kukri. So they're just bits and pieces, mainly picked up for photography props, but they do look nice on the wall. And the photos then, they're actually all photos that I've taken. I do actually have a photography page on Facebook for military photography. James 560492 military photography if you're interested. A lot of them are taken at places like Tank Fest and Tiger Day down at the Tank Museum in Bovington. There's a show I usually go to down in Leicestershire every bank holiday August. If anybody wants details, just drop me a line. I can dig those out for you. There was one of my favourites is the Panzerfaust firing. Panzerschreck firing. That was taken at a military reenactment day across in Lincolnshire. The photo of the Spitfire next to that, which I'm actually in, obviously I didn't take. That was taken at Biggin Hill. And some of the ones of the 432s were actually taken down at Armageddon, which is a privately owned museum in Leicestershire, where you can actually go tank driving. And I actually got lucky again. My wonderful other half actually got me a chance to do that as well. So that's where they come from. Don't seem to be any other questions having come in now. I've gone through all of the ones that people sent in beforehand. Hopefully you found that useful, or at least vaguely interesting. I'd settle for that. So I'll give a couple of seconds to put any more comments in. Hopefully, if this does turn out to be popular, we'll actually do this again. We'll actually run some more question and answer sessions, just basically across. What I'll do is let the questions build up, and once we got enough to do another session, we'll do it. So there don't seem to be any more questions coming in. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. It's been some interesting questions. It's made me think, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel and share any links to this, because the more people who watch it, eventually it'll get to the point where I can do, I get it monetized, and then I can be buying more stuff for review, and basically having more time to do it. So see you soon.